Irvine, California.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It's great to be here with so many evolved souls, and it's wonderful to share my perspective, to share my teachings with you. I call them the Evolve to Love teachings. It's about how we're all in training and in healing to evolve to the Christ consciousness. And so as Dr. Sharon, you mentioned that life has a way of getting our attention, wouldn't you say? Absolutely. Right? It's happened for every one of this room. We all have our story. Life has given us either a cosmic 2x4. It started a little tap on the shoulder, but eventually we started to pay attention. So let me ask you, how many of you know people who don't know that they don't know, but they think that they do know? Do you know anybody like that? Right? And what I hope to do by the end of today is to demonstrate that's every one of us. Because what we know is where we're at. And God is infinite. And we begin to understand, we begin to tap into the divine presence, when we begin to tap into our divine nature and really connect with life, we begin to understand when Jesus said, "In greater things than I." He knew that spirit is always expanding and growing, that there are no limits. And to understand the journey of the soul, and this is what I want to speak to you about today, the journey of the soul to break through this veil, this illusion of separation, and to reclaim our divine nature, to understand what it means to truly live the life. And to do that, we need to sort of define what we believe as God, but you've already done that so beautifully, and the energy that you create in the room with the vibration is just fantastic. But also really understanding is, as I've been able to understand, and again, I understand what Jesus said, understanding humility of myself, I can do nothing. It's simply God within me that does the work. And we understand when we lose our identity, our ego self, our limitations, our limited beliefs, that life is going to get our attention one way or another, right? And for me, I was fortunate enough to have brain surgery at 18. That was sort of got my attention. And I was a hockey player, so you probably don't have a whole lot of hockey out here in the desert. But it's amazing. I passed out unconscious. I was unconscious for 3 days in a coma. I woke up and half my head was shaved. And I had a tube in my head, and they basically gave me 15 months to live. So that really got my attention. And it is amazing how you can have a life-changing experience and then you try to go back to who you were before. Can any of you relate to that? Our identity is over here and life is trying to get us over there. Have any of you had goals over here, but they weren't in alignment with the divine plan? Yeah. But you have a goal and you say, well, I'm not a quitter, right? I'm not going to give up. This is what I want to do. This is my goal, and I'm going to keep going, and life's going, well, how's it working for you? Right? We got a plan, Jay, are you ready? And I'm like, no, I'm busy. I got goals, I got things to do. I think I'm all these things, and you're trying to tell me that take me on somewhere else, and there's a resistance. And how many people do you know who see that God is one thing and they believe in God, but life is something else? Life is hard. Life is a struggle. Relationships are difficult. Do you ever notice that? Wherever you go, there you are. Right? You can move, you can change cities, you can change religions, right? You can change your name, you can change your occupation, but life doesn't really care, does it? Does law of gravity care what religion you are? Right? And does it out to punish you? Right? Are you the victim of the law of gravity, or is it there to work for you as long as you work in alignment with it? And so what we understand with our divine nature is how many people, as you know, they go through life with these limited beliefs that perhaps they took on as a child. Perhaps they came into this world with these limited beliefs and they got the perfect situations, the perfect parents, the perfect siblings, the perfect upbringing to work on the lessons that they are here to learn and to heal the issues that they are here to heal. And to understand that each lesson that we heal is a step up the stairway to the higher self, the God self, the Christ consciousness. Again, it doesn't matter what label you put onto it. What matters is that you understand what it means to live the life. Because there's this place of heaven, which where did Jesus teach that is? Right? The kingdom of heaven is within. Now, how many of you here have tapped in to that divine presence? And I know when I used to get up to speak, that I would just be able to get completely out of the way. I would stand up on stage and not even know what I was going to say. All I had to do was completely trust and send love to the audience to feel the energy in the room and allow spirit to work through me. in order to do what work needed to be done. If I had an agenda, if I came into the room saying, well, this is what I'm going to tell you, that would be imposing my will of what I think you need to learn, or I just want you to think I'm really smart, right? Or if I'm there to be of service, am I willing to be fully present, trust the process, trust the moment, and be of service and allow Spirit to use me to heal whatever needs to be healed in that room? And then when I would get off the stage, life was hard. Have any of you experienced that before? I got little appetizers where all of a sudden I could feel it on stage, I could feel that presence, I could be of service, but I noticed that even in my family I had issues. And sometimes I couldn't even see myself, but guess what? Life gave me lots of opportunity. Guess who you attract in relationships? Guess who you attract in business? You keep seeing the same things showing up, and it's life's way of loving you so much it wants you to grow, to understand that we're here to grow, to evolve to this higher consciousness. We can resist it, we can pretend it's not there, we can fight it, right? I like what you referred to earlier in the sense that I had some authority issues. Right? It's a good thing because the doctors gave me only 50 months to live, right? So sometimes it worked for me, right? And at other times, life was trying to get my attention and I was kind of resistant. I didn't kind of like it. I'm like, you know what? I got goals. I got things I want to do. And life's like, we got a plan for you, Jay. It's over here and it looks really good. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm busy. And how many times in your life do you feel that life is getting your attention? And just like you notice, how many of you notice that your body is a perfect feedback mechanism? Have you noticed that? Can you fool your body? Right? If you exercise, do you get results? Yeah. You bet. If you don't exercise, do you get results? Oh, yeah. You still get results, don't you? If you do random training, what kind of results do you get? Random results. Specific training, specific results. Now, if we understand that our body is a perfect feedback mechanism, and would you agree, with the right training program, we can completely reshape it and recondition ourselves physically, right? Yeah. Well, as an athlete, I was always taught my performance was 80% mental. The good news is after brain surgery, you begin to think a little differently, right? And if you have problems with procrastination, I seriously recommend brain surgery. You'll get over all your issues in a hurry. But I played hockey for 3 years after the brain surgery against doctor's orders because that's where my identity was. And I remember one day at hockey practice, I skipped to the coach and I said, Coach, if our performance is 80% mental, like you keep telling us, why do we spend 2 hours every single day developing 20% of the results? What do you think? Was that a good question? I thought it was a good question, right? And I was a goalie. Goalies have a reputation of being a little different as it is. So he said, well, if you want to get more mental, use your head to stop the puck and leave me alone. And so, but I started to understand that if I took the same training principles that work on the physical muscles and I applied them to the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual muscles, just like I could recondition, right, my physical body, I could recondition my mental, my emotional, and my spiritual muscles. Look at the consciousness that most people take into their life. Was it specifically and systematically created by them, or is it the result of random conditioning? How many people, the one thing I learned going through life is that age has absolutely nothing to do with maturity. Right? And knowledge has nothing to do with wisdom. Right? How many people do you know who are adults and they're still fighting that inner child? They're still punishing themselves. They're still punishing their parents. They're still repeating the same behaviors and patterns over and over. And when I start to understand that God and life are not two separate things, that life is God in action, and that we live in an intelligent spiritual system that is happening for us. It is not happening to us, it's happening to help us grow. Everything is so intelligently and perfectly designed that when we resist it, we just make life difficult. Do you know people who like to make life difficult? Do you know some people that have a belief system that says that good things in life are difficult because you value them? How many of you were raised with that thinking that nothing easy in life has any value because if it was easy, it wouldn't have any value, right? We start to make things difficult. Anybody here ever suffer from a little self-sabotage, right? When the universe gives us good things, we're like, well, that was too easy, right? Let me make this difficult, right? And we start to resist it and fight it. Or how many people do you know that have some worthiness issues, right? You give them a compliment and they can't accept it, right? You try to give them love and what do? Right? And how many people do you know that have walls? Right? Do you know people that have walls? It's hard to get in there, right? And what happens when we build these walls is we start to evolve, as we say, like, And to get into the kingdom of heaven, to be like a child has no walls. A child is fully connected, fully present. And then one day we start to get disappointed. Maybe someone let us down. Do you remember what age you were when you first started to think outside of the moment? You know how kids are fully present? Do you remember how old you were when you first started to think outside of the moment? Whatever it was that took you out of the moment, and you started to wonder, I wonder what this person thinks of me. I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Oh, what about yesterday? I wish I had done this. All of a sudden, we start to come out of the moment. We come out of that childlike innocence and connection, and then we're fighting this ego, this separation, so we can get back into it. Does that make any sense to you, what I'm saying? Yes. And to understand this veil of separation, this illusion of separation, is the journey of the soul, regardless of your religious path. It is there in all the teachings, right? As Jesus said, the Father and I are one, where he was able to recognize his divine nature, to recognize that life is God. How many times when things happen in your life, you go, oh, why is this happening to me, right? And understand a shift in self-perception to understand it's happening for you. And it is only through the combination of unconditional love and trust that we are able to be open to feel the divine presence. And some people say, oh, well, what does that feel like? Well, there's no words to describe it. And sometimes we get little appetizers and we think, oh, that's it. When you begin to really tap into the divine presence, you know that you don't know. You know that it's just the beginning, and you know that the kingdom of heaven is this connection to life, this connection to God. And we can strengthen that muscle so that our life becomes our meditation. We're connected 24/7. We're constantly aware of the divine presence. But in order to do that, we have to live the life. And what does that mean? What are some of the divine qualities? All right? You look at this, you know, people that they're real spiritual or they're real religious, but they are very judgmental, right? Or they like to be right. They like to make other people wrong. As soon as we do these things, we disconnect ourselves from our divine nature. Do you know people who are very sensitive or they're easily offended, right? Why do we get easily offended, right? We take things personally because we're caught in the ego, which is right here, only able to see this much. Because we're not secure in our identity. So understand the ego is always searching for identity outside of itself. So maybe it's in your job, maybe it's in your family, maybe it's in your race, your color, all these type of things, and the ego clings to that for identity because it's desperate for attention. Do you know people, when they're easily offended, what happens is they give all their power away, don't they? Yes. They let other people take them out of their heart, and the heart is the only way that we can connect to that part of ourselves, that part of God where there is no duality. To understand the duality, when something happens in our life, we see God and we trust where life is taking us because we know that life is God and it is happening for us. If we're there to doubt what's happening in our life, we're in our ego, we're in separation. So to live the life is to have the discipline and the awareness and understanding to completely live from a place of love and trust. So understand your inner strength is your ability to stay in your heart and to give love wherever you go. Wherever you are, you see God in everyone and in everything. And if they can't receive your love, do you punish them? Do you beat them up for it? Do you withhold your love? Right? I know it's that growing up. I could get on stage and I could give a great talk and then I would go home and I'd be frustrated with my dad. Right? I would withhold my love and have issues there, and it would be a struggle. And understand, why is this happening? I remember when I was younger and I was in a relationship, the relationship ended, and I was crying and I was upset. My heart was broken, at least I thought it was. It was actually just opening up, right? Life was trying to open my heart, and I'm like, why is this happening to me? And I called my best friend, and I was crying, and I go, it has nothing to do with her. It's triggering something in me on such a level, I don't know what's going on here, and I'm nervous. And to understand that we have these issues that need to be healed, and life is trying to bring them to the surface so we can reconnect with spirit. So imagine when things happen in your life, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Instead of being in your head and trying to rationalize it, trying to understand it, trying to figure it out, you say, you know what? Thy will be done. Didn't you notice when Jesus prayed, what did he say all the time? God, I need a new horse. I want the best horse. I want a great horse. I want a great house. God, I want to look really good. Right? I want the best robe. Right? Was it about him? It was never about him, was it? What was he always say when he prayed? Thy will be done. When you understand that life is God in action, that is the divine will. Follow life. Life is going to take you where it wants you to be, no matter what. So there's no more right or wrong. It just is. And if your heart is open, you're going to be able to feel how you can be of service to the world, to share your gifts, to share your love and light with the world. So it matters less what you do, but more in how you do it. Does that make sense? And I was at Unity Church in Palmdale, and there was a wonderful lady there, and she had taken a workshop of mine once before, and she approached us at the workshop, and she was great. And she works at a gas station. And so some people say, well, that's not the most spiritual thing in the world, right? And she thinks it's great. She gets to practice, as we talked about with her, exercising her spiritual muscles, right? So she gets to practice all day long, and all these wonderful people that come in to buy their gas. And there was one day there, a guy came in to buy gas, and he was in a really bad mood. He'd had a really bad day, and he wanted to buy some alcohol with the gas. But unfortunately, they didn't sell alcohol. So what happened is he got really upset with her. And he started to punish her and take it out on her. And in her mind, she's thinking, oh, perfect, I get to practice my spiritual muscles. So instead of being offended, instead of taking it personally, instead of getting upset and yelling back at him, I'm going to practice holding a space.
Lovely.
And I'm going to just stand a space, and I'm just going to send him love. And he went on, and he was upset, and he was ranting and raving, and she just stood there, and she held a space. And she saw God in him, even though he couldn't see God in himself. And then he went on, and he finally finished, and she said, would you still like some gas? And he got upset, and he slammed $20 down on the table and went out to get his gas. And then she turned to the next person in line and said, how can I help you today? Without it affecting her at all. And what do you think the look on that person's face was? Right? Wow. That is strength. When nobody takes us out of our heart, that is strength. That is the divine. That is being of service. And she said, you know what the really cool part is? Is that after that guy got gas, he came back in and he apologized. I didn't have to tell him he was wrong. I didn't have to yell back at him. He came in, my actions, my energy, my love was enough because he is a divine soul. He knows right from wrong. He just had a lapse. He forgot who he was. And she reminded him with her love. And he came in to say, thank you.
Lovely.
Isn't that beautiful?
Lovely.
Now, how many times in our life when we understand this journey to break through, Spirit showed me this hose that is Spirit trying to flow through us. And what happens, there's little blockages. And these blockages are limited beliefs, false identities, things that we picked up along the way. We brought into this journey and that we've picked up along the way. In order for Spirit to flow through us and the Christ consciousness, it must clear these blockages, it must clear these issues so we can fully claim our divinity, our divine nature, the Christ within. And so it's trying to help us. Isn't that amazing if you begin to interpret life as serving you? That life always serves the highest good. Your resistance, what did Buddha teach? Non-resistance. What did he mean? He meant if you want to get into the flow of life, it means you need to begin to go with the flow of life. Does that make sense? Your resistance to life is your resistance to God, right? I know people that believe in God, but they're totally stressed out all the time. I'm like, I thought you believed in God. I do. Like, what are you so stressed out about? Well, what if it doesn't? I thought you believed in God. Right? But God is one thing, or heaven is somewhere else. And so life is meant to be hard. It's meant to be, we know some people that believe life is supposed to be suffering. But when you connect to the divine, you know that that is the kingdom of heaven. Begin to see, understand the devil, whether we understand it as evil, the devil, that's simply the ego. That a sin is anything that goes against the purpose of life. So we've made it out into, in religion, we've made it out into all these big things, right? The hell's down there, heaven's up there, it's all separate from ourselves. But all religions teach that God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. That God is the power, the substance, and the intelligence of which and through which all things are created. So if God is everything and everyone, where can heaven or hell only exist? Right? in our own consciousness, that heaven is our connection to the divine and hell is our separation from the divine. So we understand that you can't fool your body, you can't fool life. So when we finally mature to the point where we stop trying to get away with stuff, right? When we finally have the willingness to see ourselves, the willingness to do the inner work, and the willingness to live the life, because when we don't do it, the only person we're punishing is who? Ourselves. And there's a great phrase and it says, does it hurt bad enough yet? Are you willing to make the shift from struggle to surrender? Are you willing to surrender your limiting beliefs? Are you willing to surrender your false identities? Are you willing to surrender to life and say, you know what, life, I'm all yours. I'm all yours. I'm here to love, I'm here to give, and I'm held to be of service however you want. And let life know that you're open and available, and to you there is no more good or bad. It's all good because it's all God, so whatever life brings at you is perfect. When you begin to see the perfection of life, the perfection of the soul, the perfection of the plan, there's nothing else but perfection. And all of a sudden, instead of you having the ups and downs, there's just all ups because it connects you to life. If something happens in your life and you give your power away, it disconnects you. And you can feel the vibrational change, right? Understand what it means to love ourselves. Would you agree with me that we tend to treat other people exactly how we feel about ourselves?
Absolutely.
We tend to treat the environment exactly how we feel about ourselves. And I know people that believe in God, but they sure don't talk very nice to themselves. They're not very loving and kind and honest and generous and forgiving with themselves, but they expect other people to be. So imagine we begin to see God in the mirror. When we look in the mirror and we're able to see God, how do most people treat a church?
Very loving.
Right? Extremely loving, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
You'd almost say that most people treat a church, in all religions, most people treat a church with absolute reverence, don't they? They are always very respectful, right? Most people, when they pray, they're very deliberate, aren't they? You also notice that when most people pray, they're going, God, do this for me. God, do this for me. God, I need this. God, I need that, right? Now, is that in the place from separation or connection?
Separation.
If you're in connection, you don't have to ask for anything.
That's right.
Because you know it's already done. God knows your needs. There's no disconnect. What did Jesus do? He said, thank you, Father, thy will be done. It is done. He didn't say, God, just in case you weren't paying attention, right? I could use a little more money over here, or please, this is happening over here because, I'm kind of sick in case you didn't know, right? And what we finally discovered is that dis-ease is when we make life difficult. The body that you can't feel, that gives us these symptoms, not to punish us, just like life. It gives us these symptoms because we know the body is such a perfect feedback mechanism, not just to our physical health, but our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual health. Each sickness or dis-ease shows up in the perfect part of the body that represents the issues that we need to heal. And when we get back to making life easy, which is to align back with our divine nature, which is to be back to being loving and kind and forgiving and generous and honest, when we start to lose our story. How many people do you know who love their story? Right? Their whole identity is attached in their story. When they meet you, they can't wait to tell you why they are the way they are and whose fault it was. Right? And so they're still punishing those people, but ultimately, who are they punishing? Right? Themselves. But it's scarier for them to lose their story because without their story, they have no identity. Does that make sense? How many of you hear that if you didn't have your job, would it change your self-esteem or self-respect? If you didn't have your material possessions, would it change how you feel and how you see yourself? Because if it does, there's an attachment there. You're truly not seeing your divine self and you're truly not trusting life. It's like, I trust life as long as I got this, right? Because I still don't feel safe because of my attachments. And if you could go through all the challenges, go through a divorce, lose your business, lose your money, and still be happy and loving and kind, you know you made it, right? You know that, you know what, God, I trust you, and you're just getting me ready for something else. Because life in its perfection is a perfect preparation process. Everything you didn't get as a child is perfectly preparing you for what you're here to give as an adult. You're here to learn to be forgiving. You know what forgiving is? Getting back to giving. Do you know when you've truly forgiven? Is when your actions change. And I know people that have dedicated their lives to creating world peace, but they don't even talk to people in their own family. Like, why don't you talk to them? Well, they don't understand me. They don't get it. I said, oh, it's still about you, is it? But you're teaching love, but you can't love them because they don't understand you. Have you ever thought of maybe just loving and accepting them the way they are and apologize for being such an ass? Right? Because, right? Exactly. It's very arrogant, right? And what is arrogant? That's the ego, right?
Low self-esteem.
And low self-esteem. But guess what? The person I was talking about, he's been teaching the Course in Miracles for 20 years. He can tell you all about it. He can give you a workshop on it. But when it comes to doing it and to living the life, there's still a little child there who's stuck. Have any of you felt like that, where you're stuck? And how do I get past this? How do I truly forgive? And he says, you know what? I've forgiven them. Why aren't you loving them? Why are you still trying to change them to the way that you think? Because you feel like you need to make them wrong in order for you to feel good about you. Why not just love and accept them the way they are so that you can truly walk your talk? You can truly demonstrate what you are. As long as you're withholding your love, what are you doing? As long as you're withholding your love, as long as you're withholding your gifts from the world, you're still holding on to something. That's life's way of letting you know you're still holding on. Perhaps it's that inner child who's still frustrated because they had a parent or one parent or two parents who didn't know how to love them. Did anybody here have perfect parents? Right? We got one. All right. It's always nice to have one or two, right? And often we see that people, they come in and they understand that they had a parent who didn't know how to love them. Maybe they had a parent who didn't understand their divine nature and needed to make the kid feel small in order for them to feel big. Or sometimes you have a parent who's trying to live through the child and puts all their dreams and hopes and aspirations into the child, and you feel this tremendous burden to please mom and dad. Right? And if I don't please mom and dad, I guess I'm a failure. Right? Do you have any of you been caught in that trap before? Where that seeking approval, right? And that no matter how much accolades or credit you can get in the outside world, right? If mom and dad don't like it, I guess I'm a failure. How I feel about myself is still dependent upon other people and situations outside of myself. And if I'm in that place, am I in connection or in separation? Is my identity here in the physical plane, or is my identity in God? When we make that shift from fear into love, that shift from a limited belief system into a limitless belief system, and all we are is God, our identity is in God, and the nature of God, the essence of God, the essence of who we are is love, and the nature of love is to give. And that is this shift from get to give. When you are here to serve the world and to love, when you are here to go with the flow of love, that you live from a place of love and trust, you will find an effortlessness to life. You'll see that the struggle that you experienced was you're doing the whole time. And it wasn't happening to you, it was happening for you. Life uses pain as a prod to our remembrance because pain is an illusion. Death is an illusion. All there is God. And we begin to understand and experience it. You can't fake it. That's the great thing I love about life is you can't fake it, you can't buy it, you got to do the work, you got to live the life. Right? And the rewards are awesome. I love to ask people, I love it when people tell me that they totally get it. When somebody tells me they get it, I know that means they don't have a clue. Right? I know when someone just looks at me and they look to me in that way and they just nod because they know when you tap into that divine presence, you know that you don't know. You know that it's just the beginning. It's just a whole new beginning. And there's just depth after layer. And when you're bathing in that divine energy and you are completely immersed in that divine bliss, you know that you don't know. You understand what Jesus said when he said, "In greater things than I," because you know that it's expanding, it's uplifting energy. And that's what I believe when we live inspired. We make that shift from motivated to prove ourselves to being inspired, which is here to serve. And I believe inspired means to be living in spirit. When we live in spirit, we feel that uplifting, embracing energy, and all of a sudden we're engaged in life. We want to contribute to life. It is our natural divine state. When we're withholding our love, when we're building up walls, when we pick and choose who we give love to, oh, I think it's safe over here, right? I'm going to get a pet, because I can love this pet all I want. It's never going to reject me, right? And what's the beauty about relationships? Why are relationships so challenging to so many people? Right? Because in relationships, we experience true vulnerability, don't we? That person, all of a sudden, that person has the power to hurt us. If I open my heart to them, maybe they'll hurt us. And what about if you come from a place where you don't need anything from anyone? How about that when you completely take your identity in the divine, you don't need anything from anyone. You're only here to give. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. Right? You don't need any of those things. You know who you are. And if someone can't receive your love, what do? Do you punish them? Do you withhold your love? Or you just keep loving them? But in relationships with the vulnerability, what do relationships do? All your issues go where? Up to the surface, don't they? So I'm doing good in life. Life is doing good. How's your relationships? I don't have any. Right? I do a lot better when I don't have any. I don't get anybody get too close to me. Right? I got this nice little guard around, right? How many people do you know that they pray to God to protect them? Right? We see that all the time, right? People want to protect themselves. Understand that you are protected. Love is your protection. When you give love, you surround yourself with loving energy, with the light. It's all there. It's up to you to know that you are protected. I believe there's a shift that happens from the higher self, a shift from believing in God to knowing God. A shift from belief to knowing. I don't have to ask God. I give thanks because I know it's already done. It's all in divine order. I trust the process, trust the moment, and begin to see the perfection into it. Imagine when you go into a relationship and they're saying, you know what, I'm not feeling very good about myself. I didn't have a really good childhood. My other relationships didn't work. And I'm not feeling really lovable. So could you fix me? Could you make me feel better about myself? How would you like to have that job? Right? Imagine when you go into a relationship saying, you know what, let's support each other's growth. You know what, the universe, life, is supporting your spiritual growth. Everything that is happening in your life right now is there to support and help your spiritual growth. Any resistance is just making life difficult. So be willing to see yourself going into a relationship. Go in completely vulnerable, because vulnerability is your openness. It's your humility. Humility is how we're open to receive, and the only way God can give us more is when we give what God has given us. So when we give our love unconditionally, we open up the hose so more love can flow through us. I always hear people say, well, I'm waiting for a sign from life. And that's when I love to tell them, that's when life is waiting for a sign from you. Because there is no separation. That's when life wants to know, do you remember who you are? Do you remember your divine nature? You are a divine being. How many people do we hear in the spiritual community that say, well, we're spiritual beings having a human experience? We hear that all the time, right? Well, guess what? That's a progress, isn't it? But guess what? When you make that shift into the higher self, you become a spiritual being, and life becomes a spiritual experience. The ego is the human experience. The higher self is the spiritual experience, because you get to experience God in everyone and everything. You are aware of that divine presence in everyone and everything. There is no separation. And if life takes you out of your divine self and into your ego, if there's still an issue left and you get triggered, guess what you do? You start to laugh at yourself. You know the thing that the ego hates the most is a sense of humor. Because the ego is very, very serious. It takes everything very serious. It takes everything very personally. And when you start to laugh at yourself, the ego is powerless.
Exactly.
And understand in life, take back your power to love. Take back your sense of humor. Life has a great sense of humor. I've spent much time with Jesus, and this guy is hilarious. Let me tell you, he's got a great sense of humor. He doesn't take himself or life too seriously. He is here to serve. He sees the drama unfolding, and he sees the bigger plan unfolding, and he doesn't get caught in the little, oh my God, this is the end of the world, right? He sees the bigger picture. From the higher self, we're able to see the drama of life unfolding, and we're able to see the humor in it. We're able to see that mankind's fighting themselves. Jesus showed me this veil, this bubble of separation, that humanity is caught in this bubble, in this veil of separation that we call the ego. And the journey of the soul is to break through this bubble, to break through this barrier, this veil of separation that we believe is true. And that's the journey we're all on, and it's taught in every one of the religions. Every religion is this close. It's just a shift in self-perception, a shift in the teachings to understand. You know, we see in the Jewish religion that they're waiting for the chosen one, for them to finally understand they are the chosen one. You are the chosen one. Do you have any idea how incredible you are? How special you are? It teaches that we are the perfect temple. What are temples built for? Worship, for communion. You don't have to go to church to be with God. You have to go into your heart to be with God and to give love. There is no separation. We spoke in the church on the weekend in Huntington, and it was funny, there was another church on the way, and they had a sign saying God's house. How limited is that? I didn't know God lived there. I thought God was omnipresent. I thought this is God's house. Right? Imagine we don't have to go to church to be with God. We go to life to be with God. We are God. Life is God. There is no separation. And we begin to feel again. How many people do you know who are numb? Right? They're going through life and they can't even feel. I've been in that place before. Right? Where you're numb. You can't even open up your heart and you're withholding your love because you just don't feel, you just can't do it. You're so self-absorbed. Right? That you need to really get over yourself. Right? And so we have relationships, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with our parents. And when we finally ask those people to help me see myself. Where am I struggling? All of a sudden we begin to have relationships that support each other's growth. I'm not going to punish you for triggering my issues. I'm going to say, wow, show me myself so I can grow. When you have the willingness to grow, the willingness to see yourself, you are living in alignment with the divine plan. That way life doesn't have to keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you until it hurts bad enough. When you start to participate consciously and lovingly in this divine plan, it gets easy. In fact, it gets effortless. In fact, it begins to open up to different dimensions and levels that you didn't even know. You had no idea that you didn't know. And when you really begin to grow, when you know that you don't know, and you begin to communicate on different dimensions and experience things that you're like, wow. And when you experience these things, you know that there's so much more. So let's get rid of all limitation. Get rid of all these things that we tell ourselves to feel good about ourselves and just surrender our total limitation to embrace our divine nature and then just to see God everywhere and everything. To practice exercising that heart. I like to get out of this thing. Right? The ego lives in the mind. The higher self lives from the heart. It is there to give love and open up and to put down your walls. And it's so powerful when you go into any relationship, in a partnership, at work, anywhere you are, where you don't need anything from anyone. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. Imagine that, because you have your identity in the divine. And if someone can't handle it, you know what you do? You just keep loving them. And that way you understand when you go into a situation, you go into it to serve the highest good, not with an agenda. You know a lot of people that have an agenda for everything they do? In life they're spiritual, but they give to get. We know, see in a lot of religions, they do everything to what? Get into heaven. Right? They're not doing it because they know that they're divine. They're doing it because of the reward system. Right? Or I get away with stuff here because I'll be rewarded when I go here. And yet in all the teachings, it teaches that the kingdom of heaven is within. Right? So the devil or evil is simply those things that separate us from our heart, that separate us from our divine self. So again, to understand, do you need to ask the law of gravity for forgiveness? Does it judge you? Neither does God. We don't have to ask God for forgiveness. We just have to get back to what? Giving. That's what forgiving is. It's getting back to giving. It's for you to say, oh, I get it. I remember now. I remember who I am. Instead of being all about me, I'm going to go out there and serve because I know that life is always serving my highest good. So if I go out into life and I serve the highest good in every situation, I am in what? I am in alignment with life. When I'm in harmony with life, with the divine plan, there's a connection. And this connection is heavenly. This connection is an effortlessness. And you will notice that wherever you go, doors open up, things happen just effortlessly. Instead of going, oh, that was too easy, right? I was taught, as an athlete, it's got to be difficult, right? I was taught as an athlete, don't show vulnerability, right? Because that's a weakness. And guess what? It works great on the hockey rink. Guess where it doesn't work? Life, right? So there is some unlearning that needs to take place. And again, to have the persistence instead of going after your goals, and even if your goals are not aligned with the divine plan, and persevering that you're going to achieve your goals no matter what, even though life is trying to say, we have a plan over here. And guess what? The ego, right, it can't stop your soul's evolution. That's the good news. The bad news, it can make your life a living hell, right? And when you finally say, okay, ego, you're cracking me up. You say, you know what, thank you, ego, for getting me to here. You've allowed me to experience some of my personal power. The ego isn't a bad thing. It's a perfect part of the divine, perfect plan. And when you begin to see yourself, to begin to expand your awareness, which is your consciousness, to recognize the ego, to recognize the energy of the ego. It's a heavy energy. Do you know people going around and they're heavy? Right? You get into an elevator with them and their energy is heavy. So what do? Do you avoid them? Right? Or just send them some love, right? I had one guy say to me, all that stuff you talk about is fun and dandy until something cuts you off on the highway. Right? And isn't that true in our society? We're like, oh, I get it. Then we go outside and boom, we try to go out there and make things happen and try to force things to happen. And when we try to force life to happen, we're imposing our will. And we begin to relax. Have you noticed that, any of you, as you on your spiritual journey, as you begin to live your life from a place of giving love, trusting the process, trusting the moment, seeing the perfection in everything and everyone, have you begin to notice that your physical body relaxes and your energetic body relaxes. And when our body is relaxed, we're able to feel again. And it feels good because all of a sudden we can let that weight go. We don't have to do years of inner work, years of healing, or all these type of things. We can do it that way if we want, right? God doesn't judge us, right? But what He wants us to do is to get back to giving, back to our divine nature. And that to me is part of the perfect plan. And so what I'd like to do is sort of now at this point is sort of open up to you guys. You guys get to hear all kinds of interesting speakers and all different perspectives. And I would love to have any questions from any of you on anything of what I've talked about today and how you can apply that and integrate that into your daily life. Because daily life is the real training ground. It's the healing ground. That's where God is. God is in every moment. And that willingness to see ourselves. So I hope what I'm talking about tonight makes sense. And I'd like to open it up to you guys and see what you think.
This is what we teach.
Well, what I notice is a lot of people is that they say, yeah, I get it, but then I listen to their vocabulary, and their vocabulary is still in separation. So there's always another level to get to. It's endless growth. And that's why we can really help each other grow, because we say, yes, I understand, but then I talk to you and I hear separation. I hear resistance. I hear a story. So there's work to be done. Until God is not out there, until our identity is not somewhere else, until our language, our vocabulary reveals so much about where we're at on our evolution. Does that make sense?
I have a quick question for you. In the write-up here, you talk about the new earth. Is this? Can you speak to that?
Sure. I believe the new earth, this new consciousness, the second coming is the coming of the Christ consciousness, where all people will be living in their higher self, in the Christ consciousness. I believe the laws of right behavior are built into this perfect spiritual system Do you ever notice when you do something good for someone else that it feels good? Have you ever done something for someone else where it felt so good where you almost felt guilty? Have you had that experience? I remember the first time I had that experience, I'm like, wow, I feel bad for feeling so good. But why do we feel good? Because it's in alignment with what? God. It's in alignment with our divine nature. God is good. When we do good things, we're in alignment with God. When we serve others without agenda, without trying to get anything, we're in alignment with the divine energy. Because the divine energy is unconditional. When we're unconditional, we're in harmony. And so this new earth is when we're living in alignment with the life, with the divine plan. We're living from this Christ. We don't need man-made rules because the rules are built into the universal system. If I act in a way that's not divine, what happens? I'm separate. When I'm separate, I can't feel the divine. So who am I punishing? Yourself. I don't need a man-made law to tell me I did something wrong. I know because I'm disconnected. If I've never been connected, I wouldn't know any better, will I? Right? So when we begin to really expand our awareness and feel that connection, and all of a sudden if we get out of that connection, we start to feel the heaviness, we start to feel the limitation, and we go, ooh, that doesn't feel very good. I get it back to giving. I can get it back to being what I'm here to give. And that's the new earth. The new earth is where there's no more labels, no more separation. Why do we need labels for? Labels are what? It's an agenda of what? Separation, trying to make people feel better than other people, right? What if we lose all the man-made rules, right? So that to me is the new earth. And what about boundaries? Wouldn't that be cool if we had no more boundaries, that we saw the planet Earth as our home without boundaries because it doesn't belong to anybody, right? It belongs to all of us, all right? So I believe that is part of the new earth that's taking place. And I believe the vital factor that each one of us plays here is that as we heal ourselves, we heal the world. We talked about that lady holding a place. If you're willing to do the inner work, if you're willing to see yourself, if you're willing to forgive and willing to love and accept everyone without judgment, without withholding, then by doing that, you are holding a space. And this is amazing. A lot of people say, yeah, I really believe in God, and yeah, I get that. And yet, how do they take care of themselves? When you go into a church, most people are really, they take care, they're very careful how they treat the church, but they put crap in their body, right? They don't exercise their body, they don't take care of it, they don't eat very well, they're totally disconnected from their body. Well, how can you be connected to the divine and be disconnected from your body? It's all vibration, it's all energy, and as your vibration lifts, the food that you desire changes. You don't want heavy food. All of a sudden, you want light, you want food that resonates with so again, your diet reflects where you're at on your spiritual journey. Do you know that the yogis, they would teach yoga to prepare the body for longer periods of meditation? And we're now in the new earth. We're getting to a place where life is your meditation. Most people meditate to connect to God, and then they go back to life. Right? And most people, when they're meditating, they're just stuck in their mind anyway, right? What time is it? Am I done yet? Right? But understand, when you're aware, you get to be connected. The whole purpose of meditation is to strengthen your connection, to surrender all your thoughts, to practice surrendering, letting it go, and letting God come through you. But you can do that now in this new earth by making life your meditation. The connection is 24/7. And understand, this shift in consciousness is not for God to be with you, it is for you to be with God. This evolution that we see taking place, the evolution of the golden rule, is not to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The evolution of the golden rule is as you do unto others, you do so unto yourself. So to do something undivine to you is only to what? We are what we give. We heal from what we give. So again, it's a privilege. When you get to the place in your life where you understand it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to give your love. It is a privilege to serve. And when we get to that consciousness, we know that we're in alignment with life. How many people do you know who are spiritual? They're just have a lot of resistance to being on the planet. Right? Life is hard. Why am I here? I don't get it. My work is done. I just, I know a ton of people like that, right? And they're still fighting life. Because what are they doing? And I understand this, is that if you are still withholding your love, if you're still allowing fear and doubt to affect the love that you give and the gifts that you give, then you're still holding on to something. You're still holding on to something, whether it's the inner child, whether it's something you came into this life to heal. But as long as you are withholding your love and fear and doubt is running your life, you are stuck in separation. You are stuck in the ego. So you can work it out this lifetime, or guess what? Life doesn't judge you. Come back and try again next time. Right? And life is going to give you the perfect circumstances, the perfect parents, the perfect siblings to help you see yourself the next time. And there is no time in the divine, so, right? And your guides are there to watch you and support you, right? And they're chuckling all the way. They're going, geez, I thought he had it this time. Right? You ever hear that cosmic sigh? You know, sometimes like when you have one of those aha moments, and I almost hear the divine. You know, you hear the guides going, oh, "Man, it's about time." You know, like, we thought you got this last time, Jay, but you know. And I remember times in my life where you're praying, "God, do this for me. Just get me through this. I don't know how you do it," and then it would always work out. And one time I remember praying to God, "Just get me through this," and then I'm going, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I can't even take myself seriously anymore. Why am I even doubting? It's ridiculous." So I said, you know what? I'm just going to totally experiment with my soul potential and say, you know what, God, let's see what you got. Let's see what this, I want to see how you pull this off. Because I can't even come up with a solution to this. And you know what? Great miracles happen when you get out of the way. And all we have to do is get out of the way and have the courage and the love and the trust to do so. And then life becomes fun. It's supposed to be fun, right? Serving others, seeing God in everyone is supposed to be fun. Laughing at yourself, laughing at the drama of life is funny. That's when you know, when you have your sense of humor. That's when you know you're starting to live in your higher self. And when you're starting to give your love to everyone. Whether they believe you or not, whether they agree with you or not, you don't need anything from them. You don't take it personally. Do you know people that are seeking appreciation? They give to get appreciation. They give stuff to feel good about themselves, right? They join things to get, it's all about them all the time. And that's okay because that's part of the journey. So we don't have to judge them as being wrong. We can support them with our example. And hasn't Jesus been the perfect example for that? Right? And I remember my whole childhood, I would wake up in the evening and I would see this guy standing in my room. And he was wearing a purple robe and had a gold ring on his finger. And I was fortunate I had a spiritual mom who I was able to say, every time I wake up, there's this guy standing in the room and he's so loving, and I can't wait to wake up in the night and see him there. And for years I would see him there in my room. And then when I was 18, my mom gave me the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. How many of you read that? Right? The 18 years of Jesus' life that aren't in the Bible. And guess what it describes Jesus wearing? A purple robe with a gold ring on his finger. And I started to cry. And just to know that that's available all the time. So it's not for God or Jesus with us, it's for us to be with them. To raise our vibration so that they're here already. Some people can see it, some people can feel it, but to know that they're already here and they're always supporting you on every level. And when you're ready and when you believe it and you know it, you'll be able to communicate and to have that connection on deeper and deeper levels. So some people might think that's crazy, and some people might say, I got you, I know that, I experienced that, I feel that. So anyway, I hope that makes some sense. Are there any other questions? I'll just make them... anything else anybody want to add or say?
I just wanted to say, you presented that. For me, it was like perfect. It was like,
Thanks. Well, thank you. And that's, again, I just try to get out of the way, right? Let spirit do the work. Let the energy in the room dictate the work, right? And that's when you go into a situation to help a friend, right? Instead of trying to tell them what to do, instead try to remind them who they are. Right?
You mentioned earlier that the religions of the world were close.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that the gap will be closed or not?
This is the work, man. This is the work, right? And we do it with our example. We do it with our love. But again, understanding the Christians, they're so close. I used to, as a kid, I used to love the Bible. I used to read the Bible all the time. It's still one of my favorite books. And I just adore it. I love the life and teachings of Jesus. He always, when I communicate with him, he always says to call him brother. That I'm your brother. And so I see Jesus as my perfect big brother. And he led by example. And that's what we do. When we lead by example and that we can come in and speak truth, we know that their soul knows truth because they're God too. And they're this close. But what happens with religion is they're so attached to their belief system that if someone else is right, guess what they must be? Wrong. So I'd rather make you wrong and not ask questions and stay in my little bubble, even though it feels lonely and isolated, right? Rather than say, you know what, we believe in the same, there is one God, and it doesn't matter what we call it, and God doesn't care what we call it, but we have to live it, we have to be it. And I really think that's a special time that we're coming to, and that's the work I've been given here to do, and I resisted it for years. I started to speak when I was 27 and did a lot of corporate stuff, and then the messages kept going deeper and deeper, and I'm like, whoa, how's this going to work? And finally, life gets, I feel like it's the arm wrestle, and you struggle, and then life, I finally go, okay, you win life, I'm yours, what do you want me to do? And all of a sudden, life got easy. It's a beautiful thing.
Can you speak a moment about your Evolution of the Soul series?
Sure. My first book is called Humans in Training. And that's a book which is really the founding principles.
Is that this book?
Yeah, that's the book I brought with me. Now, when I wrote this book, basically, when I was going through after the brain surgery, ever hear the story about the Himalayan musk deer? And it's you've heard about it over there, right? It's the male musk deer, and around a certain age, it begins to emit a musk scent. And it roams around the forest looking for the source of this scent. And it's known to become very restless and very irritable because it can't find the source of this scent that seems to follow it wherever it goes. In fact, it's known to get so restless it will jump off a cliff to get away from the scent and kill itself. Where the hunters find it and take the pouch out and sell it for a bunch of money. That was me after brain surgery. I was very restless, very irritable, searching for truth. I knew truth, but I was looking outside. I was jumping out of planes, walking on fire, you name it, I've done it. Looking at physical potential, right? Going to the full limits of physical potential to go, oh wait, I think it's not called piece of car, piece of house, piece of job, piece of, other things. I'm like, oh, I have to go within. And so I was reading books. I was reading maybe a book a week or more. I was stuck in university where I was in one of the top universities in the entire world, and I was frustrated as all could be because they didn't teach what I wanted to learn. And I started to connect dots. I started to take the pieces from different religions, understanding from physical potential to spiritual potential, and started connecting these dots. And I decided to write the book that I wish someone had written for me when I was searching for an owner's manual for daily life. Because when you're given 15 months to live, you have a sense of urgency. And all of a sudden, you don't want to wait lifetimes. You know that there's work to be done. And life was getting my attention just in time. Because if I had gone any much further in sports, my identity, you know why athletes have a hard time leaving sports? Because that's where their whole life, they can't be anything other than that. And I think they got me out just in time. Right? And I still struggled with it for years. But that's why I wrote this book. I tell people I wrote the book that I was dying to read. Because I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was getting bits and pieces here and there. And most of the books I did like were thousands of years old. So I thought, how do I take this all-inclusive, timeless wisdom, put into a modern language that's practical and simple? Because the greatest teachers, like Jesus, they spoke how? Simply. Through parables, but simple language. We can talk in quantum physics, but if it doesn't make sense, am I a good teacher? You go, he's really smart. What do you say? I don't know. Right? But we all want to know that the truth is there within us all. And so that's what I wrote the first book. My second book is called Humans in Healing, The Shift from Fear to Love. And it's all about the journey from fear to love, from the ego to the higher self, from get to give, from my will to thy will be done. And that's the second book. So the first one is the foundation, mastering the fundamentals of daily life. And the second one is that shift up into the higher self, into the Christ consciousness. And so it's a real pleasure to be here because I get to speak in a language that I know you guys get. And so it's cool. Sometimes when you're talking to different audiences, you got to, talk to them where they're at. And exactly. Exactly. And then we have to see family everywhere. All right? That's the prodigal son, to understand that God never stops loving us even when we lose our way. Because we're losing our way, it's just a journey of the soul to break through this illusion of separation and return back to the connection, to return back to the divine. So there is no judgment. We don't have to ask for forgiveness, we just have to get back to being who we are. And so we don't have to judge others, because guess what? Life's going to teach you humility. I didn't like it at all. Right? I had all kinds of attachments I didn't even know I had. I thought I had it all together, and all of a sudden life showed me I had a lot of attachments. I had a lot of identities. I had a lot of issues with my dad. When my dad died, it was a trigger for a whole bunch of other stuff I didn't see coming. But again, it was perfect timing for the perfect issues, and guess what? Then I ended up dating someone who, guess what? It's like dating my dad for some scary reason. So I didn't get to work it out with my dad, so who I ended up dating? Someone who treats me just like my dad. So life is saying, okay, you didn't get it with him, so now you get to try it here. Right? It's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And then when I get to heal the issues and say, okay, I don't have to beat myself up anymore, I'm learning how to communicate, I'm learning how to love myself, I'm learning how to treat myself in a loving and respectful way, I'm learning to treat others in a loving and respectful way. I'm understanding that doing the right thing is just working in the divine energy. It's not hard. There's no temptation. There's only punishment. The people talk about the dark and the temptation. I don't see that at all. When you connect to the divine, you don't want to do anything else because it's so good over here. You don't need anything over there because you want only to be here. So you begin, everything you do is about union. And anything that creates separation doesn't feel very good. You just want to get back over here. So that's been my experience, and I believe that's the experience for all of us if we're willing to make it.
Are you ready to write another book?
Well, my third book is going to be called Humans for Giving, Serving the World into Love. They've given me a list of a whole bunch of stuff to do. So they wake me up at 4:30. Sandra can tell you, she hears me talking in the night, and I'm cracking up, and most of the work comes at 4:30 in the morning, and they give me a list of videos to do and books to do, and they give me the titles, they give me the... So I'm just trying to catch up with it all. But it's a whole series of books, and the fourth book will be called Humans in Love. But so humans in training, humans in healing, humans for giving, and humans in love. And so that's the work, and to unite people under one God called by many names who is us all. And to see that we are all brothers and sisters, to see that we're all on the same journey, that we are the chosen ones, that we are special, that we are perfect expressions of God, that we are the perfect channel for God to perfectly express itself in and through each of us. And this is the journey we're here to do, is to see that veil, to see that separation, recognize it, and get back to our divine qualities, which is being loving, kind, gentle, forgiving, honest, and generous. Abundance is in your giving, not in what you get.
Do you know what was being shouted at me yesterday was, I think it was, I don't even watch the news, but I am aware that there's